All right, I'm going to call to order the City of Burlington's Board of Finance meeting on Monday, June 1st, 2026. It's 5:02 p.m. Our first item is the agenda. Is there a motion on the agenda?
You got the agenda.
Moved by Councilor Barlow, seconded by Councilor Carpenter. Thank you. Any discussion on the motion before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. On to public forum. It's the practice of the Board of Finance to first go to members of the public in person and then online. Is there anyone here from the public? See no one except for city staff, so we'll go online. And I see former City Councilor Sharon Busher. Welcome, Sharon.
Hi, good evening. And this is not on your agenda, but I don't know if you're aware of it. I wasn't. I tried to reach the Parks Department today, and you don't have a choice. It brings you over to Miller. And I got an older gentleman who told me that the phone system was down and would be down for about a month, and there was no way for him to connect me to anyone in Parks. And I thought that that was odd, but I also wondered if that's true, why they wouldn't refer us back to maybe the clerk, Catherine, but to the clerk treasurer's office to, if they could connect you to someone that you're trying to interact with. They did provide opportunities for cell phones. I took that opportunity for two people, both in the same area, and their mailboxes were full. So I don't know if this is an ongoing problem, but I just wanted to alert you to it. I find it odd not to be able to access someone or leave a message for them specifically. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. I don't normally do this in public forum, but we will look into that. That's very odd. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Is there anyone else online that would like to address the Board of Finance for public forum? And if you're online, you can raise your Zoom hand and we will promote you so you can speak to us. Going once, going twice. We're not seeing anyone else online with a Zoom hand raised. So I will close public forum and we'll move on to our consent agenda. Consent agenda, is there a motion?
To adopt the consent agenda and take the actions.
Moved by Councilor Barlow. Is there a second? Second by Councilor Carpenter. Thank you. Any discussion before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. On to our deliberative agenda. So item 4.1 is an unassigned fund balance request to roll over unused REIB community celebration donations. And for this item, we have our Director of REIB, Dr. Kelly Perkins, online, and maybe also the CAO, Catherine Shaw, to speak to this. But first, I'll turn it over to Kelly. Good evening, Kelly.
Greetings. Thank you so much. I won't be before you long. Last year, the REIB was tasked with fundraising for the community dinner and did so in excess of the $19,111 that ended up being spent. The remaining balance from the donations that were recorded last year was $25,639. There seems to have been miscommunication, not on the part of REIB, but maybe information not getting to the accounting department, but also around process. And those donations were not rolled over to us. And so now that that issue has been figured out, we're looking to resolve things by getting that $25,639 into the REIB budget. We also have donations coming in for this year, also for Juneteenth for that community dinner. And so now that we seem to know some of the process gaps that stopped this from being actualized last year, this rollover, I will definitely work with CAO Shad in order to ensure that those current donations that are coming in and anything left from this $25,639 come into FY27. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Perkins. Any questions or discussion on this item? Oh, CEO Sean.
If I could just add very briefly to what Dr. Perkins said, part of the logistical trickiness with this is simply the fact of when Juneteenth is celebrated during the year, meaning it is very close to the end of our fiscal year. And so those of you who are careful watchers of the city budget will know that the way that we usually roll money over from year to year is in our annual budget resolution. And last year's budget resolution was completed and approved before we knew how much money was going to be available to roll over. And so we got that information from REIB on July 1st, the first day of the new fiscal year. And so that just doesn't work neatly with our process, which is just to once a year do budget rollovers in the budget resolution. So that's something that Kelly and I are working on, a smoother process so that any excess donations from this year's Juneteenth won't need to wait to roll over. But in the meantime, of course, we want to make right this issue from last year while we're trying to make it smoother for next year.
Any questions or comments on this? Councilor Carpenter.
I appreciate how that can happen. I think Kelly in her office kind of got the brunt of people being a little bit stressed. And I just want to make sure, Kelly, you feel you have the information to get back to those folks and explain what happened.
Yes, and that has already been done. Anybody who reached out via email specifically, I hadn't received any calls, but anybody who's reached out via email, I have responded to.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Councilor Travers.
Yeah, thank you. And sorry to be running a bit behind in traffic here. I'm parked outside, so I'll be in just a moment. Thank you very much for bringing this forward. I fully support it and think that it's absolutely the right thing to do. I guess my question is if you could just speak a bit more to, because I've heard from some of the folks in the public that have reached out with concerns, including concerns about this being sort of characterized as the result of some sort of miscommunication. You know, my understanding is that this issue of these donation monies not being available to the department is something that's been flagged and made aware to the administration for a number of months now. And so I guess I'm just wondering if you could explain why this is being addressed now, as opposed to why we didn't take action to account for these donation monies earlier in the fiscal year. Thank you.
I'll handle that one. And it goes back to kind of the last point that I made, which is how this was originally set up, which is the way these donations were captured and filtered into the general fund. And that is a process that, to my knowledge, has been going on since we set up the REIB department, but that's not the best way that we could be capturing these donations, because it does require a rollover every year, and that requires this extra step. What we could do, and what I believe we'll do moving forward, is to instead capture these donations in, and we'll seek the auditor's help with this, either in a committed account or an assigned account, so that that money is completely segregated, and you'll know that that money doesn't need any special approvals to roll over. It automatically rolls over year to year. And so then we avoid this issue of only doing rollovers typically once a year in the budget resolution, and the fact that Juneteenth specifically comes after the budget resolution makes this very messy. And you're right that there was internal lack of communication within DFA, which REIB, the previous director, let us know this money needed to be rolled over on July 1st of last year, right as we were becoming DFA. That's not a normal request. It is something that could have been handled sooner, but this new way of handling donations so that number one, there's a better paper trail, which is not something that we've had in the past as we're getting the donations. And then number two, as we're accounting for them outside of the general fund, both of those will help to ensure this doesn't happen moving forward.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that answer on multiple counts. And I think the only other sort of question and point that I will make here is one, I was not able to see and can't recall whether or not in the FY26 budget there was an anticipated sort of donation revenue line item in the way that there is in the proposed FY27 budget. But I guess my question on that front is, to the extent there were anticipated donation revenues in the FY26 budget, whether the adjustment here from the unassigned fund balance is also going to decrease that revenue line item in such a way that REIB would not be expected to raise that same level of donations if that was accounted in FY26. More importantly, though, I would say, looking towards FY27, my recollection of the proposed budget is that there was an anticipation that REIB raise $40,000 in donations as we head into the next fiscal year, and would just want clarification that as we now build better processes around this, that there will be rollover not only of any unspent monies from FY25 that we're now accounting for here, but also to the extent the department, as Dr. Perkins just mentioned, is currently raising donations. Just want to make sure that these are also going to be flagged as rollover to FY27, and that the department would not be expected to raise the same level of donations as perhaps initially indicated in the first presentation of the budget. I'm happy to continue that conversation, but just wanted to make sure to flag that here before taking action on this item.
Yes, we are having an active conversation about FY 26 money that will be rolled over, thereby reducing the burden for FY 27. So you are correct, the current version of the budget does have a $40,000 donation, and you should expect to see that reduced in the final version of the budget on June 15th.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Travers. Any further questions or comments on this item before we look for a motion? Is there a motion? Councilor Carpenter?
I would move the proposal as published on Civic Record.
Thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Councilor Barlow. Thank you. Any final discussion before I call the question? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Dr. Perkins. Thank you, CAO Shad. Appreciate it. Shad, sorry. Moving on to item 4.2, which is on our Champlain Parkway project with our Department of Public Works, a maintenance agreement.
Hi. Thank you. David Spencer, Director of Public Works. With me is Senior Public Works Engineer Corey Mims. Corey will give a brief overview of the standard finance and maintenance agreement that's in front of you. I think the important context here is that, as I highlighted in my FY27 general fund budget, There is financial challenge in operations and maintenance. We're building and reinvesting in our infrastructure to a level we haven't in a long time. And we are struggling to find the general fund dollars to sustainably operate and maintain our assets. We've been working with Parks and Rec and EFA to start a conversation that we hope to bring forward a proposal in FY28 to better address this disconnect.
And as Stephen indicated, this is a pretty standard document that the city has on projects. Maintenance, obviously, when there's a federal and state investment in a project, they want to see that that asset is maintained in the future. This agreement is in line with the previous agreements the city had signed with the state underneath the cooperative agreement when we received funding for the Champlain Parkway project. They indicated that post-construction, the city would maintain those assets moving forward. It also is in line with our Act 250, which installed as part of this project different assets, whether it be stormwater infrastructure, plantings, other assets that were installed as betterments to the community that also is required to be maintained. And again, this maintenance agreement just indicating that the city of Burlington is with state and South Burlington planning to maintain, as indicated, the assets in this document. I would note that again, as part of this project, the city of Burlington did get deeded a portion of parcel that is in South Burlington that we would also be maintaining. There is in state statute flexibility for a municipality to manage a highway infrastructure that lies on the border when there are certain extenuating circumstances that either the design requires it to be across a municipality border or there's a few other circumstances in which that is acceptable. We've checked in with the city attorney's office just to confirm that there isn't any conflict there and that there is ability for us to continue to maintain in alignment with our previous agreements with the state before this project. So this is fairly straightforward about the boundaries for snow maintenance, winter maintenance, just physical assets, lights, line striping, potholing, as well as underground as far as stormwater structures that are a part of the drainage plans for the project. So with that, we are just looking to, this agreement is also one of the final agreements necessary for our permitting with regards to opening of the parkway, which is anticipated at the end of the month. And so we would need to get this signed by ourselves, South Burlington, and the state in advance of June 29th, currently estimated date.
Questions or comments by the board? Council Brother.
And thank you for this. And I expressed it too. I'm really excited that we're finally opening the channel there.
You had mentioned it needs approval by South Burlington. Do you know when they're taking that up, and do you anticipate any?
We was told that they're going the same night as ours. In the way in which this agreement is written, there really isn't, and the previous documents that were able to be obtained to the point, this project's old, right? This has been around for a long time and there's been a lot of agreements. So from what we've observed, there wasn't any previous agreements that South Burlington had indicated maintenance responsibility. And so therefore they underneath this agreement really don't have maintenance responsibility. There are some items because the infrastructure is located in South Burlington, some of their policies may come into play and when the city were to do any sort of maintenance or work. So therefore, as a municipal neighbor, we are including them because of that purpose on this maintenance agreement, while it's not identifying specifics for them for this project. And they're generally okay with it for our conversations.
And are there other certain similar arrangements on other pieces of property, or is this unique? The Champlain Parkway.
I would say for town highways, there are not many in which we have operating of highways in other municipalities on the border. I can't really speak to what other agreements may be in place around the airport, but it is not unheard of, and based upon the history of this project, it is in line with what the city has for many years agreed to do upon completion of the project. Thank you.
I would just add that we did include a line in the memo. It says if additional information from decades prior is uncovered that indicates a different direction, that at that point we would follow up. But we've done our due diligence to see what information we've been able to uncover in past administrations and past periods when frankly the city wasn't even managing the Parkway project prior to 1998. So this is accurate to our understanding today.
Any further questions or comments? Councilor Chambers.
Sorry if you mentioned this already, but layman's terms, can you explain where the line of delineation is between what's the state's responsibility, what's our responsibility? Is it OMAD or is it?
It pretty much, you would say Route 7, so Shelburne.
Yeah.
East of Shelburne is the state, west of Shelburne is City of Burlington. That generally speaking is it. The 189 on-ramp, which is on the south, kind of going onto 89 off of Route 7 or Shelburne, that is also managed by the state. It's previously been as part of the 189. And so that portion is City of Burlington property based upon the project of Champlain Parkway, but it is underneath this agreement can be managed by the state. Continue to be managed by the state of Burlington.
Okay. And the ramp that comes around, that runs along sort of segment 0 of the bike path.
The one, so the ramp that comes down from Shelburne onto the connector.
Yeah, the connect. I guess I'm referring to the connector itself. Is that our responsibility?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that is city of Burlington.
Okay. Understood. You've heard me say that before, and I'll just mention it again. And unfortunately, you've probably seen that already. The brand new light poles there have already been completely tagged by someone who's been back there. I think historically, there's some red rock outcroppings there that have been tagged over the years, and it remains my strong desire, particularly if the city is responsible for the maintenance of this area. I don't see it spelled out expressly in terms of the responsibilities of the state municipality to address graffiti and tagging on either one of these projects. I would assume that that is, correct me if I'm wrong, implied in maintenance of the various components of the project as outlined here, like lighting facilities, for example, or landscaping, for example, with respect, even though some of the landscaping is a natural component of it there. It remains my strong desire, though, that as we open this up, anyway, for us to clean this up before folks are starting to use it. This is going to be one of the main gateways into the city, and just I'm hoping that, especially as we're articulating our responsibility for maintaining that segment of the road, that we're taking care of it before opening day, and then of course thereafter.
Yeah, and I can speak to that a little bit. In the project team is working to do some additional cleanups that weren't really contracted initially. The change order to get some of those items that you have identified that weren't part of the contracts. I would say in a better established state to be open. Now, after that fact, again, it is the city's responsibility to maintain infrastructure. Things such as you pointed out, like the rock face. It's just determined as to where the city, at what point we do additional beautification, so to speak, or cleanup versus how much we allow when we have limited resources and what we can do. But generally speaking, it's our intent to keep the thing in as hopefully as good shape as when we get on day one.
Great. Yep. Easier to do now with no cars back there.
Yeah, that's right.
Also, will be harder for folks to tag it once cars are on.
Sure. Both of those things are true, and we are working on the opening presentation to have the corridor be.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further comments or questions on this item? Or we see if there's a motion. Councilor Barlow?
Would move to approve and recommend that the city council approve and authorize the mayor or assigned designee to sign the maintenance agreement with the state of Vermont and the city of South Burlington, subject to the prior review approval of the city attorney's office.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow. Is there a second? Second by Councilor Carpenter. Any final discussion before I call question? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, team.
Thank you. Yep.
And absent any objection, I'm going to propose we take a 10-minute recess before we get to our next item. So with that, I'm going to call a recess. We'll come back in 10 minutes. What time is it? 5:27 PM. We'll be back at 5:37 PM. Thank you. I just want to chat with you. I don't have time to. I'm sorry. I don't have time.
Is me online.
But you can make the
Yeah,
motion.
what?
All right, are we back on?
We are back.
Okay, so bring us out of recess. What do I say?
Is he promoted?
Do I come out of recess?
Yes.
We're back in session. Time is it, at 5:37 PM, right on the dot. That's. And we're moving on now to item 4.3, which is an ordinance gross receipts. Apologies, section 2130. You think I would? No, it's been a very long day. Okay. All right, so I am actually on this item, I'm going to pass the gavel per charter authority to the CAO so I can engage in debate on this item. So here's the figurative gavel, so CAO Shad will take it from here on item 4.3.
Thank you, Mayor. And to open this item, we are going to turn it over to Councilor Bergman, who is our guest, and is going to give us a quick report out of what happened in the ordinance committee.
Thank you. Let me just walk through the ordinance. It's posted on the agenda as the gross receipts ordinance revised per the CCOC 52126. You will see that we started with a deletion of the admissions taxes. This was not, there was a 3-0 vote, but there was not unanimity about this, but there was an attempt to get to a compromise on the whole thing and at least get it to the floor in a coherent way and to be part of the ongoing negotiations. That you'll see next that the permanent taxes on restaurants are raised to 2.5%. The hotel and motel tax is unchanged. The short-term rental has the definition of a booking agent, or that whole process. This was recommended by the city attorney's office and was uncontroversial or non-controversial and fully supported by our committee in both of the periods. You will see on line 28, which is now on page 2, the deletion of the admissions tax in full. You will see the deletion next of the sunset provision in full. You will then see a technical amendment to degenderize on line 47. You will see, to make it coherent, with the deletion of the admissions tax, on line 54, the elimination of that. And on line 62, we did that as well. The city attorney's office clarified the sites and athletic contests and the taxable business section and whatever this thing is, J, the definition of J of restaurant in section J and in lines 84 and 80 through 86, deleted that to just move it into the definition section. That is what, oh, and the last thing we did was to clarify the an enforcement action with regard that to make it consistent on lines 101 and 102, make it consistent with the practice of the treasurer's office in terms of the assessment of the penalty for a late payment. And that's the way they do it. And so we've made this, clarified that. There were other things in the ordinance that were set aside for the negotiating table, in particular, the items related, a proposal related to a set aside of 10% of all gross receipts collected for the promotion of downtown businesses as well as downtown enforcement and safety issues, and there may be a few other things there, but that was set aside for negotiations. All of those things, what we have put forward here actually got carried over into the negotiations, and I proceeded in those negotiations on the basis of this, even though I had said at the meeting, at the ordinance committee, that I am fine it's totally legitimate to have amendments on the floor on this stuff, and I expected that I would be putting forward an amendment to do to reinsert the admissions tax. However, we brought this into the negotiating session that we had on the budget with all the other stuff, and I have, I'm honoring what we took out of, and have honored what we have taken out of the ordinance committee in that negotiating process, and done that because I believe that this product is the product that allows us to have good faith negotiating. And I think that sums up what we did, and what I hope that this finance board will support, so that we can continue to have good faith negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, CAO. I would like to just note that I appreciate this, Councilor Berkman, for you coming and providing a little bit more in depth. We don't normally have this at Board of Finance to describe sort of the deliberative process that happened in your committee, because this is a jointly held effort as we build this budget. I just want to make sure folks who are watching this know there's a grocery receipts tax presentation that was done at your committee on May 1st. We've also posted that on the agenda for the Board of Finance. It gives a little bit more context on grocery receipts. And that's really because, as you were mentioning, Councilor Bergman, this doesn't stand alone. This is part of our larger budget work collectively that we have been doing together since January. And as I had mentioned as mayor throughout our building process, part of the assumptions for balancing the budget and closing $11 million gap that we knew we were going to have was in part by using the full 2.5% for gross receipts going forward. And in the conversations, and again, I just note the information posted there so people understand how the gross receipts tax works, how it compares in other places to the state, et cetera. So it's just a reference point. But back to just the budgeting process. So I know that as we've been moving forward, that other members of the council or in the Democratic caucus have been concerned. I've seen it since day one of being mayor, concerned about businesses, and feel the gross receipts 0.5 we added 2 years ago was something that we should reconsider. And given the changes of the economy that are way larger than Burlington, as I've talked about throughout the budgeting process, it has become a necessity for us to further adapt to make sure that we don't lose that additional revenue stream of that 0.5, because that would lead to about $900,000 less for us to work with for closing this budget gap. I took that very seriously, proposing that forward. I do understand, however, I will say that I also, while I proposed in the mayor's budget to keep the 0.5%, I understand that the emissions tax was something that the Democratic caucus wanted to eliminate for purposes of gross receipts. And so as Councilor Bergman was saying, in good faith, we've been working over the last few days here to see how do we get to a place knowing that this is one piece, but it's part of the larger discussion on the budget, which we're still not done with. And so I have been working in good faith with the Democratic caucus leader, Councilor Schachter, and others to try to make sure that we're moving things forward in good faith. And so what was originally proposed, or at least the conversation we had, is putting a little bit of a breather, if you will, a 30-day provision that would allow us a little bit more time, because when an ordinance is enacted per our charter, which is not something we can suspend as council or mayor, we need to allow for 30 days for it to be posted before it becomes effective. And this is why this 30-day period becomes applicable. So there is a motion on the agenda tonight that I will be making on behalf of the administration for your consideration, which does two things. It takes what I believe Councilor Travers's amendment, which is also posted tonight, does related to the 0.5 provision, extending it for 30 days to allow us the back and forth for the larger budget, to come to an agreement on the larger budget of all the moving parts. It's a big budget, but also make sure that we're treating both the 0.5% and the emissions tax the same with this 30-day pause, so that we can have and again, good faith ability to go back and forth with all the other provisions to make sure it all comes together like frankly a puzzle. So that is the amendment I will be proposing. So I move as it's posted on the civic clerk listed under the administration's amendment, and you will see there that this amendment, different than what is been proposed by the ordinance committee, would reinstate the emissions tax. But it's conceptual here, only for a short period of time, to give us more time to go back and forth. It is my intention that we would put forward a new amended ordinance later in the month of June, hopefully, that will get us to where I think we're headed, which is to eliminate the emissions taxes altogether, but also eliminate the sunset for the 2.5% on gross receipts as it's currently written in the amended ordinance from the ordinance committee. So that's just conceptually what this amendment is proposing, to treat both the emissions tax and the sunset the same for a 30-day extra period of time, and then we will come back before the end of June ideally, and have this reflect our final agreement. So that is my motion.
Second.
Is there any further comments? Yes, Counselor Barlow.
Is this on the amendment or underlying or all of the above?
All of the above.
Thank you for that. I just wanted to add some additional context to the ordinance discussion that we had, and I thought Councilor Bergman did a good job of characterizing the spirited discussion we had in this room a couple weeks ago. You know, one thing I'll say is many of us on the council have conditioned our support for making this gross receipts tax permanent, the 2.5%, on an assurance that we fund priorities that we feel are important to fund for the vitality of downtown. I think the mayor mentioned this. But they're important to the vitality of downtown and the economic health of our city more broadly. And I just want to state these priorities because I think they're relevant to the discussion. The priorities are funding for additional programming and events, enhanced security in the areas prone to increased safety issues, and more extensive marketing to help invigorate economic activity and help repair some of the damage that's been done to our reputation as we emerge from the pandemic and some of the crises we've had. And so I had also, in addition, you know, one of the discussions we had was I had an amendment. We were calling it a set aside, a Burlington Vitality Fund in the discussion. And so I know that these discussions that have been happening between the caucus chairs and the administration have been productive. And so I just want to say that I don't intend to bring that forward again as an amendment to this ordinance. I'm going to leave that out. But I fully expect that we will be getting to a place where we're not taxing emissions. And there was another issue with admissions that we don't need to get into now, but it's a double tax because there's also a local option tax that's being levied on admissions as well. So we had a discussion about that. I would refer any of the listening public to that ordinance committee meeting because that was a good discussion. So I just wanted to add that a little additional context. I fully expect that we'll be back with an agreement, not unlike we had last year. Last year, we did something very similar to this, where on June 2nd of last year, we pushed the sunset out, and on July 14th, I think we did it on our consent agenda. We fixed it when we put a fix into all stages of passage on our consent agenda in our July meeting. We'll do something similar with this. This is not, I don't consider this to be a big deal, but I'm hoping we don't undo any of the progress we have made on the gross receipts ordinance that coming out of the ordinance committee. So I'm hopeful that we won't have additional amendments that try to reintroduce admissions permanently. And I'm hoping that we will be able to find whatever offsets are necessary to make that a reality.
Other comments or questions? Yes, Councilor Travers.
Yeah, thank you. I suppose I would just reaffirm, well, first of all, I agree with everything Councilor Barlow just said, and also echo his appreciation for Councilor Bergman and Councilor Carpenter's work on the ordinance committee and getting this item back to us and the introduction there. I will just sort of reaffirm what the mayor and Councilor Barlow indicated, which is that I agree and very much view the gross receipts aspect of this is very much part of our consideration of the full budget for FY27, which we won't be looking at towards until the end of this month. the only reason why we're having to potentially take action on the gross receipts action a month before we take action on the full budget is because of the quirk in our rules where ordinances do not take effect until 30 days after they were passed. And so if this is a part of the budget and it did not ultimately align with the budget that we hope to pass later this month, that could present a problem. And so I appreciate the mayor's willingness to work together on our really delaying the discussion on this by another month such that we can align consideration of all the issues on the gross receipts with our consideration of the full budget, which is why I will be supporting the administration's amendment this evening.
Thank you. Any other final comments or questions from the board? Yes, Councilor Carpenter.
I haven't been quite as involved in the nitty gritty, but as we left ordinance, I did feel, and I do feel, we can get to where we need to go. And it is unfortunate that, I think my timing, we only had about 10 days to flush out the stuff that Mark and others had proposed. It's just not enough time, and that was unrealistic. Probably at the time, we not set it out of committee. So I just see this as a fix for something that the intent is there, we just didn't give ourselves enough time.
All right, only one counselor didn't speak. I'm just gonna give you a moment. Counselor Newbeezer, in case you wanted to raise your hand or get in here.
Nope, I've got nothing.
All
Keep it-
right, thank you. Then with that, we do have a motion and a second. So I believe that we are ready for a vote. So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion passes unanimously, and I will pass the gavel back to you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, CAO. So with no further business for the Board of Finance, I will adjourn the meeting at 5:54 PM. Thank you very much.